Hey folks, Larson Halleck here with what might seem like a bit of a random rant, but considering the continuing state of decay this country is going through, I think it's pretty relevant. As anybody with half a brain knows, the prison system, and really the entire justice system on the whole, completely sucks in the United States. It manages to hit the horrific balance of being simultaneously too harsh in terms of the bulk of prisoners being people who are in jail for non-violent offenses like drug possession, which gives America the highest incarceration rate on the planet since the 1970s, but it also manages to be too lenient in terms of prisons being breeding grounds for a thriving gang culture that has extended its tentacles well outside the walls of prison. In addition to that, you see such blithering stupidity as female prison guards being placed into men's prisons, where the inevitable tends to happen. But hey, you already know about the dark triad, don't you? Indeed, on the subject of quirky miscarriages of justice, it's not entirely unheard of for homeless people to commit minor felonies with the express intent of getting thrown into prison for the winter, amongst other financial abuses of the justice system. Regardless of where you're coming from politically, there is something for everybody to hate about the American justice system. So, what is to be done about American prisons? Leftists will argue that America can totally just adopt a Scandinavian-style prison, where prisoners are basically treated like paying tenants at mid-level hotels. After all, we have enough money in America, and economics are literally the only thing that determine how a nation and its people function, correct? I don't mean to sound, well, mean, but I don't see that ever happening. To be blunt, Scandinavian countries are, or rather were, countries full of nice, well-behaved white people that could be socially shamed into becoming good, productive citizens of a happy, ethnically and racially homogeneous nation-state. I emphasize ethnic and racial homogeneity, as while too much of that can be said to have its drawbacks, it does work wonders for social cohesion and forming high-trust societies. To put it simply, a white prisoner is going to be much more trusting and cooperative towards a white prison guard than an authority and subordinate of two different races. The same would go for any other race. It's not just a white pathology. America is, of course, the most racially diverse nation on the planet, and it's scarcely an exaggeration to say that the races in America are encouraged to be as tribal as possible, with this rainbow coalition barely held together by hatred of white men. And while I would never refer to one group as being superior or inferior to another, it is a documented fact that different groups have different levels of time preference and theory of mind, and thus I would theorize that some groups may have difficulty in grasping concepts like actions have consequences, or social shaming. My career as a personal trainer could probably illustrate that even better. And I'll be blunt once again, the United States has a hell of a lot more of those high time preference people than Scandinavia does. Or maybe not, as the fabled European prison systems are slowly starting to feel the pressure of increased NAM immigration and, refugees. The point is, a Scandinavian soft prison would be a complete disaster in the United States, but clearly, the harsh style we use is not really cutting it either. Recidivism is quite high, and one could very convincingly argue that the prison gang culture is stimulated by the harshness of prison. Inmates feel threatened and turn to those of their race for protection. So, what is to be done? Well, you could probably guess from the title, flogging. Yes, despite your probable shock, I truly feel that introducing flogging to the American justice system and using flogging to replace prison and forced labor for non-violent crimes would be a marked improvement. An example of how I would go about doing things is, say you did some sort of minor non-violent crime like shoplifting or drug possession. In this case, 10 lashes in the town square would be performed on the offender immediately after being caught, and that would be it. No holding cell, no prison, no permanent record, just the physical scars of flogging. Naturally, it would be adjusted based on the degree of the crime. Repeat offenders could get more lashes or perhaps a heavier whip like a cat o' nine tails. Caning is also an option. And violent offenders, those who are otherwise deemed menaces to society, would of course be sent to prison. Now, if you want to be really humane about it, you could give those prisoners eligible for flogging an option in court. Something like, you can take 50 lashes and get out of here today, or do 5 years in prison with all the baggage that entails. Now, I don't know about you, but I would take the whip. And some of you might be asking, what about the 8th Amendment? I too have a question to ask. Which punishment is more cruel and unusual? Being locked in a cage full of the savage dregs of humanity who will taunt, beat, rape, and murder you, and assuming you make it out of prison, you'll have your sentence put on your permanent record, preventing you from ever getting a decent job, and most likely ending up back in prison because your only option is to commit more crimes? Or being severely beaten over the course of a few hours and then going home? I'm Larson Halleck. Think about it. And now, a word from our sponsors. Hello, are you a fan of Larson Halleck and the Barbaric Gentleman? Of course you are, otherwise you wouldn't be watching. Would you like to help the channel grow? Would you like to help me out? If so, here's how you can. You can go to patreon.com/Larson Halleck and join the ranks of these illustrious heroes. You can also go to www.paypal.me/Larson Halleck to also donate some money. You can also buy my book. The Patreon, the PayPal, and the link to my book are all found in the video description. You can also follow me on Twitter or on Instagram. I no longer advertise my Gab because Gab sucks. Otherwise, enjoy, keep watching the videos, and spread the word.